Alright, so one of the most frequently asked questions you probably get asked if you fly quad, when people like come up to you and bother you and stuff, is, oh, how high will it go? How far will it go? How fast will it go? Like, normally I don't care about long range or this or that, but as fate turns out, I have an empty park today. So, or at least a relatively empty park. So I figure I'm going to take advantage of that to do a bit of what I call practical range testing. By practical range testing, I mean I want to kind of know what my range is in typical conditions that I fly in, and I kind of want to know, I kind of want to start building a circle of confidence. So like I guess a distance that I could look at on a map or whatever and be pretty confident, yeah, I can just fly as I want within that range. Yeah, so it's worth maybe noting how I mount everything. So we'll go over to the quad, right? Decapitated GoPro. He's like, there. Sorry about that. So that's my setup. So Immortal T is at the back. It actually hangs a little bit below the quad, but yeah, maybe when it's coming back to you, it could be a little blocked, possibly. So it's not, you know, hinked up right to the chassis of the quad, and it's maybe not the best mounting or whatever, but it's pretty decent. And the antenna itself, my antennas are not screwed up. They're relatively okay. I am not running the stubbies for these range tests. I'm actually running brand new axes right out of the box. Same setup on the quad that I always run. Everything identical, everything normal, nothing crazy. And the way I'm gonna do it is I'm gonna obviously fly out pretty far. But what I'm also gonna do at certain intervals as I fly out is I'm gonna turn around, you know, do like a circle and then continue on, and then maybe do a circle and then continue on. So what I am not looking to do is like go after any distance records under perfect conditions or anything like that. I don't really care how far the quad can go in absolutely perfect conditions. I want to know that if I'm flying around at a certain distance that I'm not just gonna like lose video suddenly because the quad's in the wrong orientation and the antennas aren't aligned perfectly or something. Safety precautions I've got, well, there's no people, but also pretty much anywhere I would set the quad down, like ditch it, because I'm not going to crash it, I'm going to ditch it. Or if I do crash, I can walk there and recover it. That's pretty important. Yeah, no traffic, no this or that. There's a few things I got to watch out for, but generally pretty safe area. And of course the fail-safe is set as well on cut, so if I want to give it up, hit cut, quad drops, done, no dramas. Also for the record, this whole park end to end, so the end behind me to the very gate where I came in is 1 kilometer. So I'm running TBS Unify on 500 milliwatts, and I'm running a Crossfire. So in theory, I am like, whatever I do in this park is nowhere near the theoretical limitations of my setup at all. Like, and that's not what I'm trying to poke at. I am looking for just establishing some practical distances that I can kind of know in my head, like, yeah, I can fly that far, man, I've done it. And there's a lot to be said, I think, for having done it. guy. All right, so I think that test was like a perfect illustration of what I was all talking about in terms of practical range testing. So I kind of got out pretty far, actually. Actually pretty much as far as I expected. So I kind of got out to around these trees here, and this is where it got interesting. So I kind of, when I was orbiting with the Crossfire, sort of in, I think right beyond this path here, I started getting some telemetry warnings on my Tyrannus because the Crossfire was not happy. Interestingly, the video was totally clean out here. I was getting little tiny flicks or whatever when I was sort of near these trees, but nothing serious and nothing unflyable, and not like, you know, it was gonna go all blank. It was actually the Crossfire that failed first, which is weird because I have the diamond antenna on it, which I was sitting and flying pointed directly. So my understanding is that the null points are the sides of this guy, but might be wrong. Could be to do with how I was sitting. So I sit pretty near the ground, etc. Although the diamond is supposed to mitigate the issues you get. So I've seen Alex Grieve talking about that a bit in terms of like how the Immortal T kind of had some issues with sort of bouncing the signal into the ground or something like that. I don't think I'm mentioning that perfectly. I felt like when I was flying straight away, I felt like, yeah, I could have punched it and like just kept going, no problem. There was no indication of anything wonky. It was more when I started moving around that the issues appeared. But hey, having said that, like, that's why I do this testing myself. No disrespect to anybody else, no disrespect to the dudes who make the gear, right? It's really well engineered. No disrespect to other dudes who are getting huge range. Now I can look into that, like, okay, what's up, you know, what happened, could I have done something better, etc, etc, etc. Like, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't be sitting right next to trees. I don't know, man, who knows. So I'm gonna go and measure that on Google Maps later. That was actually longer range than I was thinking I was gonna get, and longer range than I really actually need to do what I'm planning to do. If I had to guess, it was something like half a click out or something like that. Guess. And all I really need is like reliable video for like 300 meters actually, to do some cool stuff that I want to do. Like I said I was gonna do, I came home and I measured my distances in Google Maps. So turns out that the distance of that original flight is right here. So I'm sitting right here where the blue dot is by some trees, and right around here is where I fail-safed. So the distance basically works out to around 400 meters that I got on that flight before my Crossfire fail-safed, which is a little bit less than I thought it was. And then I did a couple more flights going the other direction. So I did some low altitude flights into this forest right over here where my mouse is, and I did some high altitude flights over the forest as well, and I got right to the edge of the park, and then I'm like, right, I'm going to turn back. So I just turned back because I hit the edge of the park, and that worked out to around, you know, 330 meters. So the interesting part is well, what happened, right? So obviously 400 meters is like way less than you'd ever expect a Crossfire to go. So I was kind of scratching my head about that one. So I thought, okay, possibly could be something to do with my setup, first of all. So that's one possible explanation. But another possible explanation is that there's cell tower signals nearby. Now, why is cell tower signals an issue? Well, because where I live, we use basically what's called GSM. So in the country where I'm at, we have GSM for basically mobile phones. So voice and data goes over GSM. So I did a bit of digging around on the regulator website, and there's a couple frequencies actually that may interfere with the Crossfire. So the first one falls under this so-called UAE 15 category, and obviously bang, so the Crossfire has two frequencies that it transmits on.
I think the Crossfire goes out on like 910 for certain regions, and then in the other region it's like 868 or 880 something. Long story short, I can see from here that basically all the mobile phone networks are all over the Crossfire signal network there. And this is for mobile voice. So for mobile data, they also have, well, guess what, 868, you know, to 870 for mobile data. And then there's another frequency blocked on 915 to 921 megahertz that is being used again for mobile data. So I mean, long story short, it's pretty obvious that their cell signals may well interfere with my Crossfire. So back to here in the park, me flying, so I got a cell tower right about here, and I've got another cell tower a little bit off the map, right at the bottom of the map, to the point that I actually couldn't even mark it. So I've got, so cell towers right there, like super low for frequency, blah blah blah, but they're also really noisy. So if I were to radiate out the range that this cell tower is covering, it's like if I were to orbit out, I mean, I can see how it would very easily cross over probably my entire flight range, but also in particular when I'm getting pretty far away from my ground station. Likewise, there's another cell tower down here. So I was, for some weird reason, even though on my second flight I made it out to like 330 meters, there was like this little dead zone here where I was just getting some fail-safes. I didn't get any, like, not a full fail-safe. Actually, I was just getting some RSSI warning stuff happening there, which I thought was really weird. I flew through it, no problem, and I did fly out farther eventually. But long story short, I am thinking that in my case, a really good explanation for why I only got up to what I got on the old Crossfire is because of the friggin' cell networks here. Because they're like right on the same frequency, and they're going to be super, super noisy. And I'm running the Crossfire Micro module in my radio, not the classic Crossfire that can go up to like whatever watts. So even though I'm running my ground station on my Tyrannus at the highest wattage it'll go, I think it's around 100 milliwatts. Yeah, I'm like, no way I'm going to compete with some cell tower marked in red over here. Like, they're just going to blast me in terms of noise. Even with, you know, frequency hopping or, you know, self-healing links and stuff, there's still going to be a certain point where, like, just the pure noise and interference from the cell towers where I live is going to create some problems.
I think that proves the importance of doing your own friggin' testing. Test things yourself. Because if I was going to go out and do something crazy thinking that, oh, I have, you know, the Crossfire does 2 kilometers, man, so like I'm gonna divide that by 2, and that means like I definitely have a kilometer of range, yeah. So if I'd been thinking like that, I would be out of a quad probably or something. Good likelihood of it. No. So just no. Test your stuff for yourself. And if it's not working for some reason, I'm sure Trappy and all that have like a lot of ways to help you out. Hell, man, the TBS lounge community is full of dudes who do like long range day in day out with no problems, and they could probably help you improve your setup or this or that. But do all that based on testing. Don't even copy some guy's setup and think you're going to get the same results as him. Maybe you won't. You fly in a different place.